the keto diet was the most Googled diet of 2018.
The keto diet is controversial but extremely popular.
Celebrities like Halle Berry and Kourtney Kardashian are going nuts for this diet. Keto devotees claim that if you banish carbs and eat lots of fat, your body will start to actually burn fat.
The ketogenic diet. This diet trend has gained so much popularity over the past couple of years. Seriously, everyone is talking about it. From social media groups to forums, everyone is talking about their success stories, anecdotes, keto diet recipes, clinging on to the idea that this is indeed a very sustainable, successful, and simple diet to follow. But this little chicken nugget is here with all the research, and I'm here to tell you the dirty nitty-gritty details about the ketogenic diet. Does it really help you lose weight? What are the other side effects? Is it safe? Should you do it? I don't know, let's find out. So the ketogenic diet is basically a diet that increases your fat intake and decreases your carb intake. This results in a biochemical shift in our bodies, which activates its emergency backup system. Basically what happens is our body goes into ketosis and starts producing ketones. Before we get into ketone bodies, let's talk about ketosis. So our body's preferred fuel source is glucose. Our body loves to use glucose to fuel muscles, liver, kidneys, the brain, and other organs and parts of our body. Glucose comes from carbohydrates, which is one of the 3 macronutrients that we consume on a regular diet, the other 2 being fat and protein. Now, if we strip the body of glucose or cut off its glucose supply, aka carbohydrates, our body is forced to use fat as fuel for the organs. So what does this look like? By not consuming carbohydrates, we're basically starving our body of glucose. So the first thing that happens is obviously our blood glucose levels drop. Now our liver senses that there is a low level of glucose in the blood. So what it does is it starts converting glycogen stores back into glucose and releasing it into the bloodstream. Fun fact, our liver can store up to 2,000 calories of backup fuel in the form of glycogen. Now once these glycogen stores begin to deplete and our body realizes that there is still no glucose coming in, some organs switch to utilizing fat as fuel. Some of the first few organs to switch really quickly are muscles, kidneys, and our liver. They're very fat adapted, so they can switch quickly. However, there are a few organs that still need glucose, like our brains and our red blood cells. It's not the end of the world, however, because the liver, this magical organ, is still able to produce glucose even though the glycogen stores have depleted. How does it do that, you may ask? Thank you for asking. It does that by converting a small amount of muscles in the form of amino acids into glucose through a mechanism called gluconeogenesis. So through gluconeogenesis, our liver gets to power the brain and red blood cells who still need glucose. So if you couldn't already tell, our brain loves glucose. It's really the brain's food, you know? It really, really wants those carbs. He really wants that pasta. Just feed him some pasta. Feed him whole grain pasta, but at least give him some pasta. Now on to ketone bodies. Ketone bodies are made out of beta-hydroxybutyric acid and acetoacetic acid. Now, I know, complicated big words, but notice how they're both acids. So both these acids require buffers so as to keep our blood pH level at a normal range. Yes, so you have to go through this extra step just because your body's producing ketones. And that's not all though. A byproduct of ketone bodies is acetone. Yes, the stuff that's in nail polish removers. Acetone. You heard me right. The ketogenic diet was originally used to treat patients with drug-resistant epilepsy, patients who suffered from refractory seizures or uncontrolled seizures. This diet consisted of 90% of their daily caloric intake coming from fats, whereas the remaining 10% being distributed between carbs and protein. So as you can see, this diet used to achieve maximum ketosis was not only a low carb diet, it was also a low protein diet. Another thing to keep in mind was that this type of a ketogenic diet was so extreme and dangerous that it could only be initiated under hospitalization. So maximum ketosis is not something you want. The modern day ketogenic diet, however, is a little more flexible in terms of protein and fat intake, as long as your daily carb intake is less than 10% of your daily caloric intake, which comes up to about 50 grams of carbs, which is not very much at all. Your fat intake ideally should be more than your protein intake. Now, to take a look at the effects of the ketogenic diet on refractory epilepsy or drug-resistant epilepsy, I took a look at a study which basically compared two types of ketogenic diet. Both these diets did show a significant reduction in seizure frequencies within their subjects. So I guess the ketogenic diet is pretty helpful when it comes to seizure reduction. The reasons as to why this occurs is still unknown. However, there is some speculation that stripping or starving the brain of its preferred fuel source, aka glucose, could lead to brain cells becoming less active, which would lead to a decreased frequency of seizures. Now, I don't know if you would want to do that if you're not having this specific condition of drug-resistant epilepsy. Moving on to weight loss effects of the keto diet. Now, this is the biggest selling point of the ketogenic diet, I believe. Most people go into it to see weight loss results. So I looked into two different studies. Now, the first study that I looked at compared two diets. One was the ketogenic diet, with less than 10% of its daily caloric intake coming from carbs and the rest of it being distributed amongst fat and protein. And the second diet was called a low-fat diet, where 30% of the daily caloric intake came from fat. I don't believe that's a low-fat diet. I think it has to be less than 10% to be considered low-fat. But nonetheless, 50% of the daily caloric intake came from carbs and the rest of it was protein. Now, the results did show that the group that was following the ketogenic diet showed an average of 2 pounds more weight loss over a period of a year compared to the low-fat group. However, over a period of 2 years, the weight loss was about the same for both groups. So, in the long run, the ketogenic diet gives you the same amount of weight loss as a regular balanced diet. The second study looked into, again, a balanced diet with 50% carbs and 30% fat versus the ketogenic diet with less than 10% carbs and the rest of it being fat and protein. Now, what they found was pretty surprising. They had the same subjects follow a balanced diet for 15 days and then a ketogenic diet for another 15 days. And while the subjects were on a balanced diet for those 2 weeks, there was a steady weight loss of about 0.8 kilograms, which might not seem like a lot. However, when they looked into the fat loss, there was about a 0.5 kilogram fat loss, which is pretty great if you're losing 0.8 kilograms and 0.5 of that is just fat. Now, once they switched over to the ketogenic diet for the next 2 weeks, there was a drastic reduction in weight. The subjects lost about 1.7 kilograms of weight. However, only 0.25 of that weight was fat. The rest of it, I believe, was muscle and just water mass. So that's not too great. So as we can see, the ketogenic diet gives you about the same weight loss as a regular balanced diet with exercise. And you lose more fat in a balanced diet with exercise. Next, let's look at the ketogenic effects on cardiovascular disease. Now for this, I looked at 3 different studies, and all of them showed a significant increase in LDL levels. What is LDL? Well, LDL is known as the bad cholesterol. Why is it known as the bad cholesterol, you may ask? Thanks for asking. So it's known as the bad cholesterol because this is the kind of cholesterol that clogs up your arteries. It prevents your blood from delivering oxygen to your heart, and if the levels are too high, it could even cause a heart attack. I'm gonna put like a little table or a chart here showing the regular LDL levels versus the dangerous LDL levels. So one of the studies that I looked at, which was a 24-week study, showed that there was about a 10% increase in LDL levels for the ketogenic group, out of which one of the participants had to drop out of the study because after 4 weeks, his LDL levels had risen so high that his doctor did not let him continue with the study. A second participant, his LDL levels rose by 100 milligrams per deciliters over the period of the study, and another participant was diagnosed with coronary heart disease after the trial. So it is pretty dangerous to go on a ketogenic diet without consulting your physician. Another study looked at a group of healthy young individuals who did CrossFit training, and half of them were on a balanced diet or a regular diet that they were on, and the other half were on a ketogenic diet. And the keto group showed a whopping 40 milligrams per deciliter increase in their LDL levels over the period of the study, which is not great. You don't want your LDL levels to go up 40 points. Also, let's keep another thing in mind. The diet that is recommended to reverse heart disease or to prevent heart disease is the complete opposite of the ketogenic diet. The recommended diet, in fact, involves only 10% or less than 10% of your daily caloric intake coming from fats. It has to be all whole foods, and it's a heavily plant-based diet. Next, let's look at type 2 diabetes. Now, a lot of keto advocates go about saying that the keto diet has reversed their type 2 diabetes, where it hasn't really reversed anything. It hasn't gotten to the root cause of the problem. All it's done is taken out glucose from the diet, and of course, if you have no glucose or carbs in your diet, you're gonna have low blood sugar. That makes sense. It hasn't reversed your type 2 diabetes. No, it's just taken the glucose out of your diet. That's all it's done. It hasn't improved your insulin sensitivity. It hasn't made your insulin resistance any better. So it hasn't reversed your diabetes at all. But then I looked at another study of 9 healthy young men. And although the sample size wasn't that great, let's take a look at the results. The ketogenic diet had shown to reduce the first phase insulin secretion index in these 9 healthy young men after a meal. Now, why does that matter, you may ask? Good question. That is an early sign of type 2 diabetes. So the ketogenic diet basically induced an early sign of type 2 diabetes in these 9 healthy young men who started off with no underlying health issues at all. So you might want to ask yourself if it's really worth it. You might be wondering how this may happen. How can the ketogenic diet possibly induce type 2 diabetes in healthy young individuals? Well, let's take a look at the pathophysiology. The ketogenic diet can increase insulin resistance, which is a cause of type 2 diabetes. And how this happens is basically a result of overfeeding or having a high fat diet results in fat building up in places where it really shouldn't be. This is also known as lipotoxicity. So fat builds up in your muscles, in your liver, in other parts of your body, obviously adipose tissues, which are fat cells. So fat builds up in all of these places and just clogs all these organs. And that is basically what causes insulin resistance. It increases insulin resistance and causes type 2 diabetes and a lot of other related health issues. Now let's talk about some of the benefits of the ketogenic diet, because there are some. There is obviously seizure reduction because it has been used to treat epilepsy for such a long time. There's also a caloric deficit when you're on a ketogenic diet because you're having mostly fats and protein and not a lot of carbs, so you're feeling more satiated, you're feeling more full for a longer period of time. But again, you can get that from eating whole grains and complex carbs. You know, if you have a bowl of oatmeal, it keeps you full for a long period of time. I've tried and tested it. It works. There's also improvement in blood sugar because you completely take the glucose out of blood sugar, so there isn't going to be any sugar in your blood. Or there isn't going to be a lot of sugar in your blood. There's going to be some. So, number one is nutrient deficiencies. Now, in a world where we already don't get a lot of the nutrients that we used to get from our plants, we don't want to worsen the effect of nutrient deficiencies. We want to get all the nutrients that we can. But going on a ketogenic diet does give you this nutrient deficiency effect. The patients who are treated with a ketogenic diet for drug-resistant epilepsy are heavily supplemented during their time at the hospital. Another side effect of the ketogenic diet short term is constipation. So by taking out all the carbs from your diet, you're basically taking out all the fiber from your diet and increasing the meat in your diet, the animal products, the whatnot, you know what I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Bathroom situation, not too great. Another side effect of the ketogenic diet is the keto flu. Now, everyone knows about the keto flu. You get nausea, you're fatigued, you get headaches, you get muscle aches, all these list of things. And it could last anywhere from a couple of weeks to a whole month. As we talked about earlier, the ketogenic diet also impairs glucose tolerance. So it can increase your insulin resistance, which we do not want. Another thing is it impairs your artery function. Remember the LDL levels? Yes, they go up, 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 up. And that means more risk of clogged arteries, more risk of heart disease, more risk of heart attacks. Why would you put yourself through all of that? And last but not least, remember how we said that acetone is a byproduct of ketone bodies? How your body gets rid of acetone is through your breath. So you have bad breath. Now let's look at the long-term risks of being on a ketogenic diet. So I came across this study that took a look at a group of participants, some of them on a ketogenic diet, some of them on no ketogenic diet, regular, whatever diet they're on. It was a long-term study. It was a 30-year study. And they found that the ketogenic group died sooner than the normal, regular group. That surprised me. So I looked more into it, and it has been known that a low-carb diet, not only just a ketogenic diet, a low-carb diet, it could lead to early death, basically. And that's what this study showed. It was a long-term study conducted on a good number of people, and it showed that people who follow a ketogenic diet die sooner on average than people who follow a regular diet. Another thing is it could lead to colon cancer, because remember how we said it causes constipation, or it could cause constipation because you're taking all the fiber out of your diet, you're increasing red meats and animal products. It just increases the risk of colon cancer. Something to think about. Another long-term effect of the ketogenic diet could be birth defects. So the study that I looked at two birth defects in particular. One was anencephaly and the other one's spina bifida. I got them right. Proud of myself. Okay, so these were the two birth defects that were looked into within the study. And they basically found that people on the ketogenic diet, women who were on the ketogenic diet, had a 30% higher risk of having babies with these two birth defects. There's like almost a surety of death with these birth defects, which is not something you want. Also, these defects develop within the first month of pregnancy. I thought that was also interesting. That's usually when women don't know that they're pregnant. So if you're on a ketogenic diet within your first month of your pregnancy, then you have a 30% increased risk of having a baby with these birth defects, and I don't know if that's worth it at all. My final thoughts: should you do the ketogenic diet? Would I recommend the ketogenic diet? I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't recommend anything. I'm in no position to recommend anything. I personally would not do the ketogenic diet because I don't think risking my health just to lose a few pounds is worth it at all. But if it has worked for you, if it has been working for you, dude, hats off to you, basically. Like, maybe you're one of the lucky ones who goes through the ketogenic diet and doesn't have an increase in LDL, doesn't have clogged arteries, doesn't have heart disease, or doesn't, you know, induce type 2 diabetes. Maybe you are one of the lucky ones, and that could be true. But my only suggestion would be that if you're looking into the ketogenic diet, please do your research. I have linked all of the research papers and studies that I looked into down below in the description box. You are more than welcome to look into them yourself. Please consult your physician or nutritionist before you start a ketogenic diet. And last but not least, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more sciencey videos.